So before we get into the strategies and tactics, can you explain why does body language matter when it comes to whether or not somebody is lying to you?
Look, it does and it doesn't.
Oh,
The research goes back and forth. A lot of
okay.
researchers will be like, body language is BS when it comes to detecting deception. It's true and it's not true. Here's what I know. People give off cues,
Okay.
right? So I'm hanging out with you. Like we met before. I'm paying attention to Mel, how she walks, how she hugs me, like you hugged me. You're base. So I get like a baseline on you, right? I start to, in the few minutes I get to know Mel, I get her baseline.
And what are you looking for when you're assessing a baseline? Because anybody could use this. You could use this on a first date. You could use this in a
You should use
business
this
meeting.
everywhere.
Okay, great. So let's start with a scenario where you're walking in and you're about to meet somebody, and I want to just get a baseline. What are the data points I'm kind of looking for if I want to size somebody up?
Okay. So I'm not sizing you up. But I'm going to use Mel because Mel, we're using Mel. So when I walk in, Mel, immediately you come over,
Yep.
you're open,
Mhm.
right? So you're open. You weren't holding anything in your arms. You didn't have your arms crossed. Like you were very open and welcoming. So immediately you see me. You didn't even, you know what else you didn't do? You didn't try to be busy in a corner somewhere and let your peers come over to greet me first. Like Emily met me at the elevators, but that was it. As soon as I walked in, actually, you came right away. Evie. So it's not like your team started handling me. So to me right away, I'm like, she's very comfortable. She's very confident. She's very warm and welcoming. Immediately, I'm like, I like her. So,
Oh.
but you feel people, do you not? Do you not feel people's vibration too? Like the essence of what they give off?
I think that's 100% right. And what's interesting about you reflecting back on just that literally 10 seconds was that today I'm exhausted. We've been hosting my parents. We've got all kinds of stuff going on. I'm more tired than normal. I was up late talking to my daughter in Los Angeles, who's going through like a really rough thing right now. And so I am happy to hear that I just instinctually walked over to you and that the experience for you was that I was open, I was warm because I know that's who I am, but I didn't think about how I would greet you. And so it's interesting to hear how many data points you had in that short interaction. And also, it is true. I think we walk in and you feel the energy of someone. And if it's warm and inviting, you're immediately at ease. But if somebody is a little stiff or crossed arms or formal or tense, then you start to go, oh my God, something's wrong with me. You know, like I think we reflect it back on
Right.
ourselves versus
what's wrong with me?
Yes.
Right.
So what should we do instead?
I think quiet and just so here, you're going to absorb people. Now I'm not talking about empathy where you take everybody's stuff on and then you feel like garbage later. That's not what I'm talking about. But when I say absorb, I mean feel people's energy. People give stuff off. It's a real thing. It's a legit thing. Feel it. Number one. The two is body language. So your body language, you're open. Your arms were open. They were out. They weren't in your pockets. Your body language communicated what your words communicated. They were in harmony. So what you said to me, Evie, I'm so happy you're here. Thank you so much. I'm so excited. That mirrored what your body did. So right in that moment, I'm like, it's all genuine. It's not a formality. I'm not another guest like, hey, okay, all right, get her in there. And you immediately stepped forward where maybe your team could have taken me, brought me in here, and you could have made your entrance. Evie, hi, I'm Mel. How are you? Some people do that.
Right.
You did none of that.
So when somebody gives you either weird energy or they are kind of open, but body language is off and you're reading something's off, pay attention to it.
First, don't make it about you.
Okay.
Because that's when we're like, they don't like me, they don't this, they don't that. And that's where you start going down that rabbit hole.
Yes.
And then that's like, it's good to be maybe self-reflective, but not so self-focused. Because then we start to make everything about us. And sometimes, most of the time, nothing to do with us. So allow people to be and look at them, listen to them. How are you today? You can ask like simple questions. Tell me about your morning. How's everything going, Mel? And then people can reveal slowly, you know what, I really had a tough morning, or, oh, this is going on. I was up late. And then now you know what's going on with that person. So we want to see if people are off harmony, meaning what you're saying and what you're showing me with your body, and then also what I feel from you is not in harmony, I just have to pay attention. And we don't call people out ever.
Like, I mean, as in that's a rule. Don't call somebody out.
Like, hey, you see, I just want to be careful because sometimes we think like, I know all this body language stuff, right?
Right.
And I'm going to call everybody out and be like, oh, you just did this, or you said this, and I know when you say this, or when you look away, you just looked away. And that must mean it's like, those cues are there for you to gather information, not for you to kind of reflect back to someone and be like, let me show you how much I'm paying attention to you and how smart I am. So despite me having this background, I never tell people what I see. I told you because you asked me. But I don't tell people. You want to make people feel uncomfortable? Tell them. You want to make people feel like you're analyzing them? Tell them. You want to make people feel that you think you're better than them? Tell them. We don't need to do that. It's for you to understand the people around you and who you're dealing with so you can make smarter decisions with people. That's what this is for. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. And what I'm gathering so far is that there is all this power in settling yourself and observing and in letting people show you and not reacting. And, you said something really important. You're meeting somebody for the first time. You're in a situation where you're on a date, or you're meeting your significant other's parents for the first time, or you're going on an interview, or whatever. You're pitching a client, interviewing a babysitter. The baseline and just giving yourself permission to observe, to get data and not read anything weird as if it has to do with you is a power move. And I think a big mistake a lot of us make is that when somebody else is off, we let it make us get off. And what you're saying is absolutely not. Just observe, keep being in the mode, pretend you're like, it's almost like, because I think of about a Secret Service agent and I think about dark suit, sunglasses in the corner, seen, maybe, definitely not heard. And so there's a cool confidence that comes from doing this in your life. Are there any cues, though, that for you over the years became kind of a telltale, like, that something with people's eyes? I had always heard, for example, that if people look away, they're lying to you, which of course made me go, wait a minute. I have ADHD. A lot of times I will look away, gather my thoughts, come back. I also think it can be really disarming for people if you're staring right at them like a prosecutor or an attorney on, that's cross-examining somebody. But are there telltale signs with the eyes?
So this is like such BS, the whole eye thing. Okay. It's like, I know, like it's a marketing thing. Think of it this way, like how can everybody do the same exact thing with their eyes? Like if we're preaching diversity and we're all so different and we're all so unique, then how on earth, is everybody going to behave the same way? So here's the thing with eye contact. How a person does eye contact depends on that person. I could have grown up shy. Could have grown up being told I was stupid. I could have been, have grown up being hit a lot. So how I'm going to look at someone is going to be kind of a marker of everything I've experienced in my life. That's why that doesn't make sense. I could have ADHD or autism. I could have, there could be so many reasons. So the thing with eye contact is there's two parts. One part is when you're looking at people, let people be. Sometimes you ever have a serious conversation, maybe with your kids, and you're trying to talk to them and they're doing this on you. Yeah. And you're like, look at me when I talk to you. You want to try to refrain from doing that because that's just them releasing stress, releasing energy. You're also getting a really good baseline on what they do when they're stressed out.
Oh.
Yes. Now, when you want to teach them, hey, when you talk to people, I want you to have good eye contact because it conveys trust. It conveys authority. That's different. So we're talking two different lanes. One lane is reading people. Just let people be. Don't correct them. Let them go where they're going to go. They'll show you. So before you asked me a question before we started, what did you ask me, Mel? You asked me, what am I excited about, right?
Yeah.
And I had nothing. But I broke eye contact with you and I looked down because you know what I was doing? I was searching my mental Rolodex and I'm like, do I? But I had to break eye contact to do that so I could really go into my head. I'm not about to lie to you. That's just what I do.
Mm-hmm.
So that's reading people.
Right.
Now, eye contact when it comes to you, right? Right now, I'm your guest. So even though I would presume that maybe eye contact is hard for you, but you're like, Evie's my guest. I want her to know I'm here and I'm present. So I'm going to do everything I can to keep eye contact because it shows I value her. It shows I'm here, that I'm present. That's separate. And so eye contact for you as an individual, like if you're going out there for an interview or a meeting and you're really trying to build trust, eye contact hands down builds trust. It's just we're wired that way. If you're looking at me, it means that I can trust you, right? So those are two things. Reading people, we leave them alone, but we pay attention to what they do. So now you know, every time I ask Evie a question where she has to think about something, it's likely she's going to do what? Break eye contact because she's searching her mental Rolodex. That's just what she does.
Yep.
But when it comes to how I show up, I'm going to be here. I'm going to be present. I'm going to look at you. I'm going to show you, Mel, you matter to me. Mel, you can trust me because I'm going to look at you. And it's also a great way to show respect to people.
On the topic of reading someone, what are the list of things that you're assessing?
It's such a hard thing to answer. So look, there's body language,
right?
Overall, just look at what they're doing with their body. Simple things, even how when they're talking to you, are they frontally aligned? So that we're frontally aligned right now.
Meaning we're like squared off against each other.
Yes,
okay.
Frontally aligned, shoulder to shoulder. That's a good way when you talk to someone to have that. You don't want to talk to people like this, or like this, or like that, or on our phone.
Which basically signals I'm either not interested or I'm nervous or I'm thinking about something else, right?
It's just when it matters to you, when those conversations matter, you really want to be deliberate with your body language. You want to show with your body to people what you're saying, that those things need to be in harmony. And for me, I really don't care what people say. I look at what they do. And so that's the other follow-up. That's actions. That's separate. But with the body, you want to have, if it's you're reading people, you just want to look at what they do with their body. You get their baseline. You can get somebody's baseline in just a couple of minutes, right? You can see, do they like to have their arms crossed? If I could stand all day long with my arms crossed, I would. That's like I'm comfortable, but I don't do it because psychologically I understand it gives off the wrong energy or vibe.
Yeah. And as you're talking, I just want, what's interesting is that you have this ability to both go, okay, as I'm observing someone else, these are the things I look for to get a baseline and assess what kind of person this is. What is the energy? What is their emotion? Is this somebody whose energy is trustworthy? Is it not? Are they sketchy? Like what's going on with that person? And the same exact things that would signal, I don't know if I can trust this person.
They're doing the same thing to you.
Yes. And also are the same things that you should not be doing if you want to display confidence.
Yes.
So it's like almost sort of common sense. Like if somebody's not looking you in the eye or their body is pointed toward the door as you're trying to have a serious conversation.
That's called a fleeing position, by the way.
That's called a who?
Fleeing position.
So when
you're speaking to someone and they're leaning. So right now the door is here to my left.
Yes.
So if we were doing the interview, Mel, and I'm like this the whole time, and I'm just like sitting at the edge like this. Mel, I'm like, Evie doesn't want to be here. It's called a fleeing position. When I would interview suspects, a lot of them would sit in the fleeing position because they just wanted to leave. Like their body literally was showing me, I don't want to be here. That's fleeing position.
Well, if you've ever talked to a kid and they're in trouble and you're sitting at the island in the kitchen.
Fleeing position.
Fleeing position. Absolutely. Yes. So it's kind of common sense almost that the things that you do when you're not interested or when you're lying or when you're like done with a conversation, somebody that's not that interested in you or might be covering something up is probably doing to you.
They are doing. And I think what you said is important because everyone's so fixated on them that and how are people treating me and what are they doing to me? And we don't pause to think like, yeah, hello, you're the other half of the equation. Did you pause to think how you're presenting yourself? Because it's a reaction. And you have to think thoughtfully, what am I doing? And what are they seeing? How am I showing up for this person? But we sometimes become a bit more very egocentric. We think like we're the sun and then everybody revolves around us. And pause and think like, how are you showing up? How are you speaking? Are you present? Are you looking at them? Are you doing these things? And even if you are, and they're not reciprocating what you think they should do, like leave people alone. Let people be.
Why?
Because if I want to have an authentic conversation with you, Mel, I'm going to let you do Mel so that I can really see who you really are.
So it's a theory almost that if you center yourself and you're in a place with people where you show up aligned with your best intentions and you're observing and you're creating this space for someone else to be and operate how they're going to be and operate in that moment, people's behavior reveals the truth.
You don't have to work so hard when you just let people show you. I remember once when I first got into this business, I left the US Secret Service and I went to meet with somebody from a management company. I was looking at managers, and I took my husband, who was another, interrogator and government, person like myself. And I'm like, come with me. And we're in LA, we sit down, and within like 3 seconds, he and I instinctually knew, I'm like, this dude could care less that we're in this room. He's in this room because somebody asked him to meet with us and he did it as a favor. So we ended that interview really quickly because I knew right away, I'm like, this guy could care. He's not even remotely interested in representing me. So at that moment, I didn't make it about me. My feelings didn't get hurt. He called it in. It was a favor called in by somebody who knew me. I thought he wanted to meet me. He clearly showed me he didn't. I end a conversation sooner rather than later, and I leave, and I don't waste my time trying to make the relationship work, trying to follow up with an email. He also showed me he's not going to work hard for me. He showed me that. I'm like, if you're this excited about me now, forget about it later. Let's say even he's like, fine, I'll do it was my entertainment attorney at the time. I will do your entertainment attorney a favor and I'll take on as a client. No, I don't want you because you just showed me what it's going to be like working with you.
This is brilliant because we are all in the mode of chasing. That I got to prove to you that I'm worthy of your time. No, like confidence and being able to get a baseline is observing whether or not somebody else is worth your time, whether or not they're displaying interest. I want to go to the situation where you may be administering a polygraph. Your job is to make sure, your job is to kind of get the truth. As somebody's sitting there and you're going through a polygraph exam, you've got colleagues that are watching you. You have this steely confidence where you're administering the test. Are there specific things that people do with their eyes, though, that do indicate that their words might not match the truth?
So,
like signaling that happens?
We'll do an example.
Okay.
So I'm sitting here, I'm interviewing you, Mel, right?
Okay.
So I'm like, hi, Mel, I'm Evie, good to meet you. So one of the things I might do is like, Mel, where are you from? Where were you born? What's your date of birth? Okay. Yep. What's your address?
Yep.
So you answer these questions.
Uh-huh.
So as you're answering these, you're looking at me, you're nodding your head up and down. Okay. I got Mel's baseline.
Oh.
So Mel, tell me about what happened on the night of March 15th, 1998. Now I watch what Mel does. Now you're likely going to shift a little bit because I just asked you to do what now?
Recall something
from the past.
Right.
So in that moment, I'm going to watch what does Mel do when she's accessing her memory. That's one.
Okay.
So I'm collecting information. So I've got who Mel is, the beginning part when she's not threatened, name, date of birth, blah, 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 right? Unless you're lying, of course, which happens. Then it's like, I'm getting you to access a memory. Then I might ask you, how do you feel about being here today? Are you doing all right? Is there something I can get you? So then I'm going to get a baseline on how Mel reacts or what you show me when you're emotional. You might start crying. You might be angry. You might frustration. Mel, tell me what you know about this case. Mel, tell me what you think happened.
I'll tell you what, sitting here right now, I feel like I'm in an investigation and I'm about to get my ass thrown in jail. I'm like you have have you always been this scary and this confidence? I mean, you have like death stare with your, because you were just like, I got my paper. Like it is amazing to be in the presence of somebody who is emotionally settled, because it makes me nervous about the fact that I might not be.
That's good.
What do you mean that's good?
That's good though, to some degree, right? You want to be steady enough to, here's the thing, we want to be warm towards people, right? You want warmth. But you also want people to like, you want to keep people on point from time to time. Because when we don't, that's when we get taken advantage of, we get betrayed, we get rolled. Like it's a dance. So yeah, do I want people from time to time to be like, ooh, I don't want to cross Evie, I don't want to mess with Evie, I don't want to harm Evie, because you want to give that off, because that's also a way to let people know, like, I'm not that person. That's a good thing. So it's finding a way to be both.
How do you do that if you're somebody who has spent a lifetime feeling insecure? Because I agree, you don't want people to take advantage of you. You don't want to get played. You don't want to get scammed. And it happens in small and big ways to people every single day. So how do you, if you've always been insecure or you've been taken advantage of, how do you start to build this?
I think first, there's no way to not ever be insecure. And maybe get rid of that word.
Okay.
Maybe think of like people, you're not gonna get it every time. Even myself, there's days where I'm like, meh, I should have seen it, or I gave that person a chance. But then I rectify my behavior. I think where people get kind of screwed a bit is when they don't. You see it, you don't course correct. That's something else. So you have to be okay with messing up. You have to be okay when people pull the wool over your eyes. You have to be okay with that. You have to be like, he won, I lost. It happened. Lesson learned. I think that's also strength.
It's not just lesson learned. What you're saying is lesson applied.
Yes, but I also have to not be so hard on myself.
Why is not being hard on yourself a good thing when it comes to making sure that you become stronger and braver in the future?
Because I'm beating myself up and I'm giving myself more anxiety. I'm making myself more insecure. And then I'm also telling myself, you dummy. That's what I'm saying to me. You're a dummy. You should have known better. That's not good. And the whole I should have this, I should have that. And my husband's very good with that. He's got this rule, nobody ever says I should have. He's like, in that moment, you make the best decision you can with the information you have. And I think that's having faith and trust in yourself.
So instead of beating yourself up, you just remind yourself, I made the best decision I could with the information and the situation that I had.
Oh, yes. And if you mess up, which we all do, being like, I messed up, I will do better, but then do better. But this, I don't think it's good. It also reminds me in training, when you messed up in training, like sometimes they'd give us, we do these shooting scenarios, which were really stressful. They would create these, Secret Service compound had we had cities that we called tiny town, where we do attacks, simulated attacks, or out in the open where we do these attacks. And they were very stressful, and they were designed to be very realistic. Everyone's there, everybody's watching everybody's moves. And when you get attacked, depending on the position, you had to memorize who goes where, under what circumstances, depending where the line of fire is coming from and what weapons to use and where the counter assault team is coming from and where the shift is. There's so many elements. So you're being attacked, and then at the same time, you have to know your choreography, and you would mess up. So in training, they call you out, be like, hey, you were supposed to do this. You did this. It's wrong. This guy's dead now because of you. Don't do it again. And they move on. Nobody has time to sit to feel bad. Move on. So it's learn, feel it. And maybe I go back home at night and I'm like, man, I messed up on that. That guy could have died if this was a real life scenario.
If you continue to dwell and beat yourself up, you actually won't move on and do better.
No.
You're going to make it worse the next time.
You make yourself insecure. How messed up is that, to live in that place?
We sit here and beat ourselves up over forgetting to get the milk or the butter on the list at the grocery store. And you're sitting here going, oh, I screwed up. The guy could have died. Okay, let's move on. And so but the point is bigger. One of the things that you have been trained in when it comes to lie detection, as you're interrogating somebody, are there verbal cues that people give you that signal they don't know what the hell they're talking about, or they're covering something up for me?
There are verbal indicators. There were some things people would do, and this sounds terrible, but it's true. And there's no research to prove this. It's just something we'd see. Anytime somebody showed up with a Bible in their hand, for an interview. Or
For an interview?
oh yeah, or the rosemary beads, or I'd see them praying.
So if you bring
before
a
an
prop,
interview.
this might be
Well,
like a, here we go.
no,
if you're
this
eye
was
rolling.
the divine prop. We
Okay.
would call this. So anytime somebody we'd see someone do that, right away is like, that guy's gonna fail for sure. Or if, like in the interview, you'd hear like, I swear to God, as God is my witness, my grandmother's grave, language like that. Like, it was like, all right, this person did it. Like those were little clues. Now, there's no science behind it, research, but like these were like things that we knew over time. So you would hear things like that because it's kind of like the truth is typically simple. You don't need to swear to God or bring your Bible in to tell me the truth. Like you don't need to sell it to me. If you didn't do it, you didn't do it. I understand you're going to be nervous. But if I say to you, Mel, did you have donuts this morning for breakfast? And you're like, Evie, I swear to God I didn't do it. I swear to God, on my mother's grave, I didn't do it. I'm kind of like, I just asked you if you're having donuts. So those types of reactions with people, you pay attention. Or if you ask your kids a question, hey, you know, what's one of your kids' names? Are we allowed to say?
Of course. Oakley.
Oakley, did you do your homework? Who, me? Homework? Stalling tactic, right? You know it intuitively. So that's a stalling tactic. We do that to buy time to think about what I want to say. So those are good verbal indicators for, you know, why is this person stalling? Sometimes when people put like possessive words, like instead of saying like the car versus my car or my car versus the car. So if I hear my car, I like if somebody says my car, that means that person likes their car. If they say the car, like they don't really like the car. So those are little things that people will do. So there are indicators in language to listen to. And then also when you ask somebody a direct question, this is the biggest thing. Did they actually answer your question?
I think a lot of people don't.
No, they move on.
Or they like, you know, I didn't say that. Or they come at you. I'm trying to think of an example. It drives me freaking crazy.
Do I need to start polygraphing people for you, Mel?
Yes, but it drives me crazy when you're asking somebody something and then they change the subject or they like say, well, I never had time. And I'm like, I didn't ask you about the time. I asked you if you know what you're doing. And so there is like a disconnect between the question I asked and the answer being irrelevant to the topic of the question.
But there you go though. You know, but you just got intel. Why aren't they answering you? Something's wrong. They messed up. They didn't do it. They forgot. That's info. All of it.
And see, I think that for me, I feel like the harder thing to try to detect in people is the omission. That the overt lying to me feels like something that would be easier to start to notice when you do what you're teaching us. Don't be so like jacked up when you meet somebody. Slow down, get a baseline, focus on how you're showing up, notice, give the person the space to be, gather data in terms of what the baseline is, and just use your common sense. Is their energy matching their body language and what they're saying? Are they giving you a vibe that you like? You have so much that you can just absorb based on common sense. And then also don't go back in and make it about you. Always just be on the observing.
We self-sabotage ourselves. We're so, I don't want to say this, like the self-development space, it's a great thing. I like books like that. I read, I listen, I want to learn. But if you're so you're so in the me headspace, no. Because you're not seeing things. So you also have to find a part of you where it's like, Mel invited me. I drove all the way from New York City. She wants me here to be her guest. There's a reason I'm here. I walk in, I bring my best self in. You know, I don't walk in, I say hello. I control the parts of me that I can. And then after that, I also have to surrender a bit and then understand that Mel is the other 50% of the equation, 50-50. But if I'm so self-focused and I make the whole thing about me and I'm not paying attention to you, I'm not reading the room, I'm not looking at your colleagues and even just the tone of the team. How are people feeling? How do they move in the room? Because that's another indication too of like the synergy of the environment. Because sometimes people can shaft you, right? Hey, come on in. The charmer, which is something you really should, those are like certain cues, certain behaviors with people. Those are definitely red flag cues. You know,
How do you know a charmer?
So I interviewed Jim Smith, who was a detective for the Canadian police, and he did serial killers. He did all sorts of confessions. We were talking about one of his cases, Russell Williams, and he got a confession. This guy, serial rapist, murder, all that. And he was actually a military commander. Anyways, one of the things I asked Jim, I said, what part of human behavior, like of all the types you've met, like what was the thing where you're like, ooh, I got to look out for that person? He's like, the charmer. The hey, how are you? I'm here. That person who's very like overt and charming and trying to very much ingratiate themselves with you. Like those people always like, why are you trying so hard? And those are true. That actually charmer that falls into a little bit of that. And I'm going to say this from a clinical perspective, a true narcissistic personality disorder or an antisocial personality disorder, which is people who you would call a sociopath or psychopath. Some of them have that trait, not all, but you'll see it there.
So how do you get the truth out of anyone?
It depends what you're asking. Do you want them to verbally say something to you? Because you cannot tell me something verbally, but you just showed me the truth. And that's all I need. There was somebody I was working very closely with and someone I liked a lot. I considered a friend, but I was also trying to do work stuff with. And she would say a lot, but her actions were very different than what she would say. She had very strong boundaries, but when it came to, if I had like, hey, I'm not available, it was like, what do you mean you're not available? I'm like, dude, you turn your phone off like at 5 on a Friday and then like I'm in another country and you're like, you're kind of losing it.
Right.
Are we, so with people, I don't physically have to have somebody tell me the truth. They can show me the truth. So with this scenario, I'm telling you, there were so many indicators with this person. I never actually had a conversation where I said, you need to tell me blah, 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 blah. They gave me so many indicators through their actions and behavior that it was enough for me to collect intel and say, nice human being, I like them, but they're not for me. And you know what I did? I just quietly pulled back because it was too hard of a relationship to have. I never had that conversation. So I think people feel like in this day and age where it's like, speak up, tell everybody. Like, why? You can, just pick and choose when you're going to do it.
I mean, sometimes it's not worth it. Sometimes it's not worth it at all. How can you truly tell how somebody feels about a situation or another person?
Mostly it's observing. It depends. You look at their performance. So let's say it's an employee. Like, just look at their performance. You can try to help people as much as possible. Sometimes, like, you can't, they'll show you. They'll show you, like, what they're willing to do and not do.
I think that it's easy to ignore the behavior. It's easy to ignore the kind of output of somebody's behavior and make excuses. And so I keep coming back to this theme with you as I'm having this experience and you're just being you. So I'm like giving you the space to be you. And you have this steely confidence and a settled nature where if you are grounded, people reveal themselves. And you can really decode just about anything if you're paying attention.
Let me say one thing.
Sure.
Because you brought up the confidence thing a few times. Like, there are times where I'm not sure, but I'm still steady in myself. Sometimes we invest in people and we want to believe in people and we want to trust in people. And then sometimes what is right there in front of us, we don't
want to see it.
No, I don't. I don't want to see it. I'm going to keep and keep and keep and keep. And then I get pissed off at you for not being what I want you to be, meeting my expectations. Then I get angrier and more frustrated. And then I'm also mad at myself for being in that situation, and on and on and on that cycle goes.
I'm nodding because I really resonate with that. How do you break that? So let's say that, because you've even mentioned personally too, that you talked about the fact that you were trained in how to deal with lies. So when you realize that what somebody is saying does not match what they're doing, how somebody is treating you does not match what they said. Somebody is, talking all about boundaries, but they're crossing yours consistently. How do you confront that? When do you know to call somebody out versus to back away?
So sometimes you do have to call people out. So in those moments where you have to deal with someone, let's say it's your team,
Okay.
and you have to address certain things, it's okay to address things. And I think that that's another important thing. It's first you make the decision, do I want to deal or not deal?
Okay.
If I don't deal, what are the consequences? It's always better to deal with things when they're small, especially when they're people or a circle of people that you have to deal with, like a team or family member where you're like, this person's not going to go anywhere. So, but when problems are small, deal with them, because what happens is they get bigger, bigger, bigger. And then you get angrier, angrier, angrier. And then it becomes this big problem. And you're like, you've done this, you've done that. And then you get frustrated. So one, when you have small problems, address them because they're small. That person now knows you're paying attention. Also, kindness is clarity. You can be clear in what you expect of others. Sometimes they don't know. We presume I wouldn't do this, so they should know better. It's like, look, they're in a whole other headspace.
Right.
So I think addressing things while they're small, not waiting for things to get big when it's important. And there are situations where it's like, you know what, this person is too much of a mess. It's too much of a shit show, or it's too much stress, or if it's someone where your phone rings and you're like, your stomach turns. That's when you're like, all right, something's going on here. I need to minimize my exposure to this person. I'm not saying cut people out, although I have done that, and I don't think that's a bad thing either. You save that for when you need to do it. And then with some others, I call it like you just make more space. You make more space. Make more space. You don't answer the phone as often. You let it go to voicemail. You can send a text rather than call back. There are ways to create space with people when you realize this isn't for me, because not everybody is for you. But it's your responsibility to recognize it and then to act on it.
I can feel the person listening completely leaning in, and there's probably a very specific person they have in mind.
Yeah.
And then there's that heartache that you feel when you go, oh my God, I'm probably the name on someone else's phone. That when my name pops up, their stomach twists because I'm not showing up how I need to show up.
Or maybe you're showing up in a way that they don't want you to show up. And doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong. What if you're calling Oakley because you're concerned and worried about, what's going on in Oakley's life. And the phone rings and Oakley's like, oh, it's mom, and his stomach's turning, right?
Yeah.
In that scenario, I would think maybe sometimes you're like, I don't care if your stomach's turning.
Right. Yes. 1,000%. Because I know that I'm acting in a way that is aligned with my values.
Yes.
In the other scenario, when you're making somebody else's stomach turn, you're probably not.
Yes. So there's scenarios for that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Guess what we're talking about today? You and me, baby. We're talking about the it factor. That's right, the it factor. I don't even know how to say it, but we're talking about it. Some people just have it, don't they? Just think about who you admire that has the it factor. I'll give you my list. Oprah, The Rock, the Dalai Lama, Taylor Swift. Oh, and the late Robin Williams and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Those folks, they have the it factor. Why? Well, because they have this ability to make me lean in and care about what they're saying. We not only admire folks like this, but we like them and we trust them. That is the heart of having the it factor. And based on the research, when people have the it factor, you know what it means? It means they have charisma. Charisma is a really cool thing because charisma will make you more influential. It'll help you make a bigger impact. And charisma absolutely is going to help you make some more money because according to the research, 82% of people's impression of you is based on whether or not you display charisma. Did you hear that? 82% of someone's impression of you based on whether or not you got charisma. I know I said it twice. That's how important it is. And here's the coolest thing about charisma. It's really easy to hack when you know the simple things you need to do. So today, here's what we're doing on the show. You're going to meet one of the world's leading researchers and experts on charisma and body language, Vanessa Van Edwards. She's a behavioral investigator, the founder of the research group Science of People, the author of the best-selling books on these topics, Captivate and Cues, and she's here to prove to you that you have the it factor. Yes, I'm talking to you. And the skill of charisma, that is how you are going to bring your it factor to life so you can make an impact, you can influence people, and you can make more income. Let's go, man. Class is in session. I am so excited for this. So let's dial up the skill of charisma. Let's bring the it factor to life. Let's increase our influence, impact, and income, people. And let's welcome Vanessa to the Mel Robbins podcast. I'm so excited for this. Vanessa, I'm so glad you're here. Well, welcome. I'm so psyched you're here.
I'm so happy to be here. I can't even tell you.
Well, let's just jump right into it because you have written the book on both charisma and body language. And so I want to start with, what is charisma and why does it matter?
What people don't realize is that charisma, more than any other attribute, is the single most important aspect of you being successful. It helps you in your relationships. It helps you professionally. It helps people take you seriously. It helps you also feel more confident and purposeful in your interactions. So charisma is that missing ingredient that we need to trigger or activate our success.
Wow. I mean, you hear so much about confidence. You hear about extroverts versus introverts. But how is it that charisma impacts all those things more than your personality or confidence?
When research looks at highly charismatic people, they find that we are looking for people who are signaling high charisma because it shows all those other things. Highly charismatic people are confident, they are competent, they are warm, they are likable. And so the most amazing aspect of charisma is it can be learned. It is not an innate trait. You don't have to be born with it or not. That anyone can learn how to be more charismatic through a very specific set of cues.
That's crazy. And you say that you were very awkward before you leveraged all the cues you're about to teach us. Will you tell us a little bit about what you struggled with?
So what's funny about charisma, I've always been fascinated by this trait. I'm a recovering awkward person. So charisma does not come naturally to me. I've always been fascinated by the cool kids. You know, I watch them and I'm like, oh, how do they know what to do? And so I was, for many years, trapped by this mistaken belief that to be charismatic, you have to be extroverted. You have to be bubbly. You have to be the life of the party. And I am not an extrovert. And so I always thought, well, I guess I can't have it. It's an innate trait. You have to be extroverted. What research actually finds is that charisma has nothing to do with your extroversion, your attractiveness, your athleticism, even your intelligence. The actual definition of highly charismatic people, what makes them different is they send a very specific set of social signals. Specifically, they are constantly signaling high warmth, so trust, likability, friendliness, along with, and this is the key, a balance of high competence, capability, power, effectiveness. And what's magical about this is if you're with someone and you are drawn into them, you immediately are able to answer two questions. I can trust you and I can rely on you. And so highly charismatic people, that's what they're signaling, warmth and competence at all times.
Wow. Okay. So let me see if I just can bottom line this.
Yes.
So charisma, if you have charisma or you display charisma, I guess is what I should say.
Yes.
If you display charisma, other people are left with the impression that they can trust you and that they can count on you. Is that right?
That is exactly right. And the hard part about this is you can be the warmest, most competent person in the world. But if you don't show those signals, the world does not believe you. And this comes from amazing research out of Princeton University, which found that under signaling, so not signaling enough. And this is what happens, I think, with very smart people. So most of my students are off the charts intelligence, high achievers, and they think, oh, my smarts will speak for me, right? I'm really smart. I can make it through anything. I'm super prepared. I have great answers. And the problem is they under signal the warmth and competence cues. And what Dr. Fisk found, the creator of this research, she found that without enough warmth, people do not believe your competence. So the problem of smart people is they think their smarts work for them, but if they're not using the right signals, the world literally cannot believe them.
Wow. That's so is this why charisma matters?
So I think of charisma like a lubricant, right? So when we're in
That's
social
sexy.
interactions, yeah, a
That
social
is not
lubricant.
exactly the word that I thought that, or the metaphor I thought you were going to use. Okay, so
But
charisma
it makes
is a
everything
social
smooth.
lubricant, everybody.
Yeah, it
Okay.
makes it smooth, it makes it smooth. Because listen, my social interactions before I learned this science were like the opposite of smooth. They were crunchy, like not in a good way, right?
Okay,
Like
so you said you were awkward. Give us an example. Come
yes,
on, Vanessa.
I'm a recovering awkward person. So awkwardness, let's talk about awkwardness is one of my favorite topics. Awkwardness dresses up in different ways. So my awkwardness, and everyone has different things. So I'm curious, Mel, if you have any awkwardness, how it dresses up. Some people, they feel awkward because of fear. Their fear of being rejected, fear of being criticized, fear of saying something silly or sounding stupid. And so their awkwardness will dress up as shutting down. So for me, my awkwardness, I'm an overthinker. I'm the person who I get in bed at the end of the night and I literally rethink every conversation I've had the whole day. Right? Or like I overanalyze my answers before I even say anything, which makes me a terrible conversationalist and listener. So my awkwardness would make me shut down. And so my introverts listening, this is often what happens when you feel awkward. You're afraid of a silence or being judged. You shut in, you close down, you stop talking. Other people, my extroverts, their awkwardness dresses up as something else. Their awkwardness dresses up as showing off, over the top, being a drama queen, talking too much. Some of my extroverted awkward friends, they'll say, sometimes I just can't stop talking. Literally my mouth just keeps going. And so awkwardness is this really interesting way that we try to cover our fear. And so when I say I'm a recovering awkward person, I've had to conquer a lot of internal fear to be able to have interactions that I desperately, desperately want to have. That could be in a professional setting, sharing my ideas, but it also could be just trying to make good friends, trying to be open with my partner. And so I think that charisma is this lubricant because awkwardness makes our relationships, our conversations, our communication crunchy, awkward, halty. We talk too much. We talk too little. There's an awkward silence. We don't know what to do with our hands, right? We're like, what do I do with my body language? We make weird faces. We awkwardly nervous laugh. So my goal with charisma, what I've found is that it's a lubricant, which we have to stick with that metaphor.
Well, it's hilarious. And it
Yeah.
also makes when you use the word crunchy about those moments when you feel awkward, that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because whether you're an over talker, oversharer, nervous laugh, interrupting people because you're extroverted, but you feel afraid of how people are going to view you, or whether you withdraw because you're afraid, that crunchiness is that sort of disruption you feel internally. And so I love this idea that charisma, which you say is a skill that anybody can develop, that charisma helps you be yourself and it helps you be more influential and it helps you enjoy social settings, whether you're introverted or extroverted. That's what I'm kind of getting from this.
Oh, that's it. And so I think that what we're looking for here is a lot of people talk about confidence, and I love confidence, but I am not naturally confident. And so what would happen is I would say, just be more confident. Like I would, I'd be like trying to mantra myself into it. And if you tell someone who's awkward to just stop being awkward, it doesn't work.
Oh,
So
it just makes you more awkward, I think, because then you're now focused on the fact that you're awkward.
It's like a meta, right? Like I worry that I'm a worrier and that makes me worry, So, right. So like, it's like a horrible meta. So what I say is, okay, I like confidence, but let's put it to the side for a second. Let's talk about being purposeful. Purposeful is much more impactful and active. It's an active emotion. Okay. So if I say, I want to show up in this interaction as highly charismatic, I want to be my warmest self and my most confident self. And I want to clearly signal with purpose to the other person, I am trustworthy and likable, but I can also get it done. I'm powerful and capable. The key here is the balance. Most of us have an imbalance. So there's 4 segments of the population. This is what the research finds. There's the sweet spot of highly charismatic people, high warmth, high competence. That's the rare birds among us.
Now, can you give us an example of somebody who is highly charismatic?
Let's do the classic, Oprah. Okay. Oprah is highly charismatic, and here's why. She can be in an interview and she can make the other person feel so comfortable. They share their darkest secrets. That's warmth. That's trust. She can cry with the other person. She can mimic their facial expressions. Her warmth literally draws out other people's warmth. However, you also take her very seriously. You know she is smart. She knows her answers. You can't sneak something by her. And that's her signaling, I'm competent. I'm going to make sure that I get to the truth here. You can rely on me to ask the hard questions. That's the perfect example. What Oprah does and what most charismatic people do, which I want to teach everyone who's listening how to do, is you can use charisma like a dial. It's just like a thermostat. So in some situations, when you want to dial up a little bit extra warmth, you can use more warmth cues. And Oprah does this exceptionally well. In her hard-hitting interviews, she'll dial up competence. She'll hit them with the hard questions. Go watch her interview with Lance Armstrong. I talk about Lance Armstrong a lot in the book. I pick on him a lot. Her interview with Lance Armstrong, she is high competence. She has just enough warmth to make him feel comfortable, but she asks hard questions. Versus some of her other interviews, she's dialing up warmth. She wants to make the other person feel comfortable. So that's an example of someone who's very nice balance and kind of uses her warmth and competence as a dial. Let's look at, for example, Steve Jobs. So Steve Jobs is often—
Zero warmth.
Am I?
No, zero warmth.
Zero
Steve Jobs,
warmth. Like,
zero warmth. The guy's a jerk.
Zero warmth. So he is the perfect example of high competence. He's constantly signaling, take me seriously, I'm powerful. And most importantly, what highly smart people don't realize is if they over signal competence, people see them as cold, intimidating, not a collaborator, not a team player, hard to talk to. So yes, he was brilliant, but his lack of warmth made people feel like he wasn't a collaborator. He wasn't a good team player. And his legacy is changing the world, but also being not kind. So that's an example of high competence. My highly smart people, my engineers, my really technically brilliant folks, they often get trapped in high competence because they don't know how to signal warmth. By the way, they might have all the intention to be a collaborator, but we are not taught how to signal warmth. And so they go, well, guess I don't know how to do that. So that's high competence. That's one bucket. And by the way, so as you're listening, I want you to think about what sounds like you, what feels like you. So do you feel like you have the balance? Do you feel like, no, you're off the charts in competence? You know you're high in competence if people always think you're in charge. You know you're high in competence if people have ever told you that you're intimidating or hard to talk to. You know that you're in a relationship or have a partner who's high in competence if they constantly Google fact check you. So highly competent folks, their mission is to get it right. They are very dominated by the idea of get it right, get the facts. And so they'll be in a conversation with you and be like, let me Google fact check that. Let me just see if that's right.
Do they share their emotions if they're high competent?
Usually less. They're much less comfortable sharing their emotions because vulnerability, sharing emotions is an aspect of warmth. So that is one way that competent people can hack warmth, is sharing more of their emotions. But usually they don't like that as much because emotions aren't correct, right? It's hard to be right with emotions. So the reason why a highly competent partner, I have one of those, is I'm going to use the word afraid of emotions or uncomfortable with emotions, is because it can't be fact checked, right? If someone says as a partner, I feel upset with you, how do you verify that? How do you fix it? Whereas